Well, good Wednesday morning, everyone. And what I've got electronically here in my hand is uh, is a book, a very old book, actually. Uh, but a few years ago, I was asked to curate a series of books for electronic reproduction and sales for the good folks at Weiser. And they called it the Magical Antiquarian Curiosity Shop. And they asked me to curate and introduce a lot of the books that were influential in my early career, in my early education of magical, mystical things. And the very first one that popped into my mind, besides, well, one of the very first ones that popped into my mind, the Yogi Ramacharaka series, which I included in this, was probably the first. But Zanoni. And Zanoni was a novel. You know the phrase, the cliche phrase, it was a dark and stormy night. That's how Zanoni opened. It's it's that cliche, but it's actually three books in one, and this is the first. All three are in the series. But I thought I would share it with you because number one, I haven't shared that material yet, and I just was inclined to do so. Anyway, so what I'm going to do today is sort of read my introduction to this series. Now you can get it on Kindle from Amazon, and I believe you get it free. So, if not free, for 99 cents or something like that. So it's a very reasonable thing. As a matter of fact, you could probably look up the Weiser Magical Antiquarian Curiosity Shop series and see the whole thing. But anyway, Zanoni was a novel written by Sir Edward Bulwer Lytton. He's the same guy that wrote The Last Days of Pompeii. Here we go. Let me scroll through here. And I'm talking about events that took place 50 years ago or even more in my life. And I may digress here here's my introduction. In the early 1970s, I joined my brother Mark, who was 6 years older than I, and became an initiate member of the Rosicrucian order Amorc. And I bet at least a few of you out there are members or initiate members of AMORC, which stands for the Ancient Mystical Order Rosicrucis, founded by H. Spencer Lewis, and the North American headquarters at the time was, and I still believe it is, located in San Jose, California. And my brother Mark, being 6 years older than I was so lucky to have a brother who is that much older than me and still interested in cutting edge things. He introduced me to jazz. He introduced me to rock and roll, rhythm and blues, introduced me to all sorts of wonderful things growing up in the 50s and, and 60s. And not only that, but it's always helpful to have an older brother going to the same school system as you. Not that he'd beat anybody up or anything else, but it was always nice. But anyway, when I came out to California after graduating from high school in Nebraska, I came out and lived with him and his wife for a few months while I got my apartment and everything, because I was going to college in Costa Mesa. But I, being a musician, and my brother at that time was sort of into motorcycles and things like that. And but I was a musician, and so I sort of traveled in a kind of a hipper circle of acquaintances and other musicians and such. And I took acid for the first time, and it totally blew my mind, and that's a whole other story. But I introduced my brother to LSD, and we had back and forth for many months. I babysat him while he tripped, and he babysat me while I tripped, and then we tripped together out in the desert, and that's why I'm here today. I'm only saying this because he and I were sort of together in our search after the early psychedelic experiments in Eastern mysticism and magical things like that. And so I really credit my brother Mark for helping me introduce myself to magical things. Well, I was a wild and crazy musician in this 68, 69, 70, 71. Did the recording contract thing with Epic Records, did a little touring and things like that. But the magical or the musical lifestyle was very, very, I enjoyed the excesses of it very much. And when I really made the decision, well, you know, I'd rather have a stable life than a quick burnout. What's that, dear? And a wife and a young child coming, yeah. So I was What's that, dear? Someone had to do my laundry. Oh, that's true. Okay, she's going outside and hang it up now. Okay, it's a beautiful day for laundry. Anyway, I was eager to do something of a spiritual nature to replace the alcohol and the drugs and everything. And my brother had joined the Rosicrucian order Amark. Okay, he started taking the lessons. He says, well, this isn't quite yoga, but it's like mystic masonry, and there's women too, you know. And I said, well, mystic masonry, because our father was a mason. So I joined the Rosicrucian order Amark, And that's where I discovered that I enjoyed dressing up in robes and strutting around in the dark. But anyway, I digress. Early in the 1970s, I joined my brother Mark and became an initiate member of the Rosicrucian Order Amorc. We were both active in the local lodge in Long Beach. I eventually would serve as inner guardian, that's an officer, chanter, that's an officer, and chaplain of the lodge. I found the experience rewarding and an excellent introduction to the basic format of the Western initiatory traditions. Our lodge had a small but remarkably well-stocked library of mystical books, some of them rather old and rare. One of my volunteer duties was to serve on a rotating schedule as lodge librarian. You might say it was my first experience as a curator of a magical antiquarian curiosity shop. As a matter of fact, it actually was. Okay. The first week I sat behind the library desk prior to convocation, I took the opportunity to quiz my Rosicrucian elders as to the best books I should be reading as a young adept to be. And when I say elders, I really mean elders. I purposefully singled out Greta, a frail Oma in her mid-80s. With her stooped posture and thick German accent, she struck me as the wisest and most mystical of all the blue-haired mind readers. Smiling inscrutably, she didn't recommend a book. Instead, she slyly suggested that I ask my, quote, master within, unquote, during the silent meditation period during the convocation. Ask is like Maria Openskaya in the Werewolf. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night can become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon shines bright. Well, she was sort of like that. Ask your master within during the meditation period. Her answer was mystical enough, I must say, but I was actually looking for some real advice from her. I pretended to be pleased with her answer and told her I would do that. About a half hour later, as I sat quietly in the darkened lodge room, breathing the wonderful rose incense and feeling like a very cool mystic, I sent out a silent question to my master within, whoever that was. No master within answered, at least not in the way that I recognized as such. In fact, I was so distracted by the horrendous snoring issuing from the gaping mouth of an elderly past master sitting opposite me in the temple that not even Sibelius's sublime and beautiful The Swan of Tonella, that they played beautiful ambient music during the meditation period, which is actually very helpful. Not even the Sibelius could lift me from the maddening roar issuing from that old Rosicrucian lion. My mind wandered to the old cartoons where snoring is indicated by a string of Z's coming out of the sleeping character's mouth. Not a very mystical answer to my prayer to the master within, I thought. After convocation, Greta came to my table and asked if I had received my answer. I didn't have the heart to tell her that all I could think about was how the old guy was ruining my meditation with his snoring. I quickly searched my brain for something truthful I could tell her. The first thing that jumped out of my mind was the cartoon Z's. So I told her. All I got was the image of the letter Z. Zanoni, she dramatically hissed through her dentures in the most beautiful accent. She pushed me aside, walked straight to the glass door of the book cabinet, and almost without looking, plucked a very old book off the shelf. It was an 1881 Zanoni, complete in Volume 1 by Lord Lytton. Even though it had been first published in 1842 in 3 volumes, the one old Greta handed me appeared to be the first edition of the work in a single volume. It was a very rare and relatively valuable book. And now I was stuck with the task of reading it whether I wanted to or not, and then report back to Greta. I started reading it the moment I returned home from lodge. I was very impressed with the story. In fact, after only a few pages, I was giving full credit to my master within for so ingeniously tricking me into selecting it. A Rosicrucian miracle. At first I thought the love story angle was pretty corny, but I really adored the magic and the alchemy and the thought of people living hundreds, maybe thousands of years. It was just the kind of story an adolescent mystic eats up. Terrible spirits, guardians of the thresholds, wise masters and disobedient students. Zanoni had everything. After a while, I even fell for the beautiful girl myself. I'd soon leave the Rosicrucian order Amorc for the stronger mystical meat of the Golden Dawn studies and the magic of Aleister Crowley's OTO and AA. But my appreciation for Zanoni and its remarkable author would only grow as the years passed. Lytton, who is perhaps best known as the author of The Last Days of Pompeii, penned Zanoni in 1842, a full generation before the founding of Blavatsky's Theosophical Society and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He was friends with Alphonse Louis Constant, Eliphas Levi, and it appears from references he makes in Zanoni that it was likely he was familiar with the book of the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. Again, a full generation before it saw an English translation. He didn't get this stuff from the 19th century Rosicrucians. They got it from him. For those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, there are true magical and true there's true magic and true magical secrets in Zanoni. So much magic that when Aleister Crowley, in the appendix to his classic text, Magic and Theory and Practice, itemized some 39 books, principally fiction of a generally suggestive and helpful kind. The book he chose to head the list was Zanoni by Sir Edward Bulwer Lytton. He said, valuable for its facts and suggestions about mysticism. And now I will leave you to savor, digest, and hopefully appreciate this marvelous work. But before I close, I want to point out the most magical aspect of Zanoni. That is, it is a great love story. And from the wizened vantage point of a magician who has worked his art for 40 years, probably 50 years now here, I can say, I can tell you without evasion, equivocation, or mental reservation of any kind, there is no subject more spiritual, more magical, more powerful, or more important than love. Antiquarianly yours, Lon Milo DuQuette. And I wrote this in 2012. So, 20 years ago I wrote this. Okay, that'll be it for today. We're coming up on the Feast of the 3 Days of the Writing of the Book of the Law on April 8th, 9th, and 10th. I'm going to be posting, we're going to read live on April 8th, 9th, and 10th, each of the chapters. So we can, you'll be able to, if you would want, and you have a copy, you could read it live with me on April 8th, 9th, and 10th. Also, prior to that, I'm going to be posting videos of Constance reading the 3 chapters of the Book of the Law, and of me reading the 3 chapters. So we're going to saturate the universe that needs help with the 3 chapters of the Book of the Law. So I hope you will enjoy that. And if you have a copy, if you don't, you can get it anywhere. You can find it free on the internet. Traditionally, you read it at 12 noon on April 8th, 9th, and 10th. But because 12 noon is different all over the world, that's when Crowley received it, but read it whenever you can. The right time to do magic is when you can do magic. See you tomorrow. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.